Well, hi, Ashley. Thanks for being here today. I know that you've had a lot of experience counseling couples. You're a licensed marriage and family therapist. And I guess we have a lot of people that divorce because of addiction or it plays a part in their marriage. Can you give us a little information about how addiction plays out in divorce?
Yeah, absolutely. So, really, addiction is one of the toughest things that an individual can face, and really one of the hardest things that a couple can face as well. Because, really, when an addiction shows up in a relationship, no matter what drug it is, or alcohol, or even a behavior such as sex or porn or gambling, it can start to feel like a third entity in the relationship because it really pulls the partner away from the other partner. And it can start to feel like a betrayal in the sense that it can feel like the partner is actually choosing um, their drug of choice over their partner, even though it really is not an active choice, as addiction is a complex disease. It can really start to feel like this, like you don't have any control or power over changing or helping your partner get out of these destructive patterns, and feel like no matter what you do, you feel helpless and you feel powerless. And that's just a breeding ground for anger and resentment. And that pattern can just manifest in breakdowns in communication. And it's really damaging for both partners. And so at some point, the most compassionate response can be divorce for both partners, because it's really an opportunity for the one partner to take a stand and set some boundaries and hold lines, of what's okay and what's not okay, and really help motivate the other partner for change.
I bet, yeah, and there's so much going on both sides. And can you tell us a little bit about just the guilt that the person, is cheering for their partner maybe to get through their addiction, or the hope that they're going to be able to come to that, how that's got to be really, really hard to process.
Oh, absolutely. And, being on the other side of someone struggling with an addiction is so incredibly painful, because it's really hard to understand exactly what they're going through and what it's like. And from the outside, it doesn't make sense why they can't stop, why they wouldn't choose to stop, even if you can see all the consequences and you feel all the consequences. You can't fix or save someone in an addiction. They have to do it themselves. And I think the hardest piece about this is it's kind of in our human nature that we don't change when something's comfortable. So even if it's miserable, we really crave what's familiar. And if it's working for us in some way, it's really, really hard for us to make a change. And so that's really when, breaking the pattern, getting out of it, getting out of the system and changing that, um, you know, may be the answer and the solution for the person struggling with the addiction to be able to recognize for themselves, this is a problem, this isn't working anymore. They may have not been able to see that.
Yeah, that's right. And I was just thinking, so I've had addiction in my life, and I remember going to Al-Anon, and some of the
Mm,
people that were married to people who had some kind of addiction, it was always tough because they would go, maybe the person would be going through recovery and have a lot of hope. And if someone was thinking they were going to still divorce, I mean, what is the best timing? I mean, is there even good timing? It sounds like, I don't know, that would be a really tough thing, I think, to kind of try to figure that out.
like when enough is enough.
Yeah, like and then if they're in recovery, that would be such a fragile time. I would think it would be almost the worst time to say, I'd like to have
Mm,
I want a divorce.
mm.
Or do you wait till they're stronger? Or, I mean, I don't know. I just think this would be really difficult.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I think at some point, it becomes up to the partner who's not struggling with the addiction to take care of themselves. And at some point, you can't take care of the other person who's struggling. You can't fix them. You can't protect them. You have to make a choice of saying, you know, maybe I've tried all of these things and none of these things are working, or we keep staying stuck in some way. And when you get to that place of, no matter what I've tried, we are stuck and I just can't keep doing what I'm doing. You know, we can't keep doing what we're doing, wanting a different result. And I think that's when you make a choice. And, you know, I know that can feel hard, and, you know, innately, you may want to protect your partner. And of course, recovery is a vulnerable time, and stressors may be triggers. But that again, you know, there is some responsibility on the person who's been struggling with the addiction too, of being able to have a support system, having a therapist, being in AA or community groups, engaging in some healthy habits like sleep, exercise, nutrition, meaningful activity, connection, you know, some of those resilient factors that can help support them through this, to really be able to, you know, find that sustainable change regardless of what triggers show up, what stressors.
Right. Yeah, that is, like you said, it's very complex.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad that there's therapists like you that kind of help people guide through this. Because now, what about the co-parenting on the other side? How do you guys handle that? Because of course, if they've got kids, even if they divorce, they're still going to have that addiction can still play a part in the co-parenting.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, I think actually spending time with kids can be a huge motivator for recovery. That can really help. You know, again, we don't always know what it takes for someone to decide, I can't keep doing this anymore and I want to change and I want to get out of this pattern and I want to break this cycle. But sometimes, you know, spending time with their kids and being able to be a parent can be a motivator. And so that is important to consider. But, you know, I think the first and top priority is always safety of the children. So it really, really depends on the stage of addiction they are at, and really their willingness and motivation for change and what support they have around that, to really make sure that obviously the child is safe when they are with that parent. And so, you know, it often may look like kind of gradual steps, right? Like, you know, kind of chunks of time, you know, and then being able to build up to more time and more freedom, you know, with more sustainable recovery.
Yep. No, I hear you. That's a tough one because, yeah, being around the kids might really be helpful, but then the other party might be a little worried or not trustful. So there's lots of
Mm-hmm.
balance there. And I'm just glad that we have a resource like you, because I certainly can't really help with that piece of it. I really don't. I get through the mediation, and it's so nice to have resources like you have.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I really say like recovery, it's not a light switch. It's not something that just happens. It's a process, and it's a really intentional process. And that actually, I use recovery in terms of both partners. The partner who was not struggling with addiction, but has been in this system and in this pattern for so long, recovery to them may look like, you know, taking care of themselves for the first time, setting boundaries, you know, and really getting out of that cycle of caretaking or, you know, healing from that pain that they've been through. And on the other side, you know, then recovery is really an intentional mindset. Every day choosing, you know, that life is so much more than just not drinking or wanting to use drugs, but really finding that fulfillment to find sustainable change. And sometimes divorce can really just be that catalyst, that break in the cycle, an opportunity for reset, for really both partners to say, we were stuck in that for so long. Addiction was just part of the system. It was reinforced in the patterns, and we both had to break out of that to find change.
Yeah, that is so good. And I know that our process is really set up for
Mm,
people who are in a place where they can communicate. And if they even have a struggle like this, it's almost more compassionate than having some really harsh and sometimes scary court dates or court imposed things that can be really scary. So we really do try to provide a space for people that are facing that who can maybe sit down the table, and we facilitate those discussions. And it's so like nice, like I said, to have someone like you that we can bring in if we need to, or consult with on how best that they can get set up for success and get through this transition of divorce. It can be really difficult. So
mhm.
thank you so much for coming on today and doing this with me today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Leslie.